Hello, Jennifer Jordan. I am so happy to have you here as my guest on Unfounded. Our topic today is ageism and its impact on women and startup culture. Usually, I try to come up with lighthearted, clever titles for each episode. You know me, that's kind of like I'm a tongue-in-cheek kind of person. But this topic is so viscerally important to me that every time I tried to be clever or cute, I actually just got more and more enraged that this had to be a topic. So when I tried to be clever, here's what I came up with instead of ageism and its impact on women. Ageism, one more way that men ruin everything. Ageism, put that in your misogynistic pipe and smoke it. And then lastly, my favorite was punish me twice. How women, both young and old, are brutalized by society's obsessions with our bodies. So as it turns out, ageism and its impact on women in startup culture was actually pretty fun by comparison. So here we are today. And when I think about this topic, I can't think of anyone that I've thought about it more or learned about it more with you. As you know, we have three questions that we're gonna explore this topic with. One that looks to the past, one that looks to the present, and one that looks in the future. And as you also know, we've given each other a sneak peek at questions 1 and 2 about the past and the present, but the question 3, the one about the future, that is the wild card. And we have not shared that with each other in advance. Yep. No formal bios on this show, but for anyone watching or listening, you can read about Jennifer's experience as an entrepreneur, as a technologist, as a mentor, as an investor, as an everything in the show notes. But instead of a formal bio, I've asked Jennifer to pick 3 words that she thinks describes her before we dive into this conversation. So, Jennifer, 3 words.
3 words. Fierce but kind. Fierce but kind.
That's 3 words.
It's 3 words. And I think it describes me.
You win the 3-word innovation award. No one has attempted to do that yet. But again, I say this every time, you do not need me to affirm your 3 words, but I am going to affirm them anyway. I stand for you describing yourself in that way, fierce but kind. That is the you that I've come to know and love over the years. All right, Jennifer, get in the time machine. We're going to the past. I'm going to ask you to look backwards for this question.
Yeah.
Rather than generalize abstractly about ageism, can you share a little bit about your experience as a woman in tech and the impact that gender-based ageism has had on your journey?
Oh, my word.
I know.
You are asking me to just unpack a whole lot. So age-based sexism is kind of where we're living here. And I think that there are 2 parts of that. One is and I think I'm going to turn around and end up asking you this question, but I think that one of the things that happened to me is that when you're young and you're a woman, we don't get given credibility because we're too young. And then we're supposed to be pretty and interesting and all those other things, but not necessarily smart, super good at your job, a hard ass when you, excuse my language, can we say that here? When you need to be, all those things. So I think that I can certainly say that when I was starting out as an equity research analyst, people looked at me with skepticism, like, who is this chick and what is she doing here in my office? And I've also even had the thing where I was a slightly older chick in my career, reasonably successful, senior VP, senior analyst, and had young 24-year-old guys questioning my experience in a way that was, like they were going to try to shock me about things or other stuff. Yeah. So that. And then I think as an older woman, I made the transition to venture capital when I was 45. And I went back to school to do my MBA as like a gray-haired lady. And one of the things that was really,
a veritable geezer in startup land.
In startup land, despite the fact that all the evidence that says that actually that's when people make the biggest and most profound companies, but whatever. And we can talk about women individually face, but I'm
46. I'm 46 right now. I'm peaking.
Right. I got a couple on you there, but I can tell you is that when I went out to start interviewing, it was really tough because then all the experience that I had accumulated that makes me a great investor didn't count for anything. In fact, people perceived it as worse that I had training and knew what knew some things and had some some thoughts, but also wanted to go and get experience within a firm versus just founding my own, which maybe was another way that socialization and ageism and the perception of women's experience was internalized in me. Like I could have just gone and started something, but like many women of my generation, I thought I should learn about it before I went and did it.
Yeah. Punish me twice.
Punish me twice. That was
yeah.
that title number 2. So
yeah, I think I may go back.
Take 2 times the punishment.
Yes, I may rebrand this episode as "Punish Me Twice." It's pretty good. All right, Jennifer, take me to the past.
Okay, I'm taking you to the past, and my thing for the past is a thing that really bothers me right now. And this is the thing about, as women, we're not alone, not allowed to like own our history. It's forgotten. And so for me, that was struck in this article that's been circulating this whole past year about there's only 20 or 25 women that ever have IPO'd a company, but the list starts in like 1990 or something. And the very first woman that I know of to have IPO'd was in 1972.
Yeah.
Her name was Sandy Kurtzig, and she bootstrapped a company with $2,000. And she grew it into a multi-$100 million company, nearly $1 billion company. And she was the CEO. And at the time, it was one of the 10 largest software companies in the world. And
didn't make the cut.
In 2011,
didn't make the list. Yeah,
didn't make the list. And she founded another company in 2011, a large venture-backed company in the manufacturing supply chain space, and like completely forgotten. So my question for you, is there another woman entrepreneur, she doesn't have to have IPO'd a company, whose story you would share to inspire other women? Somebody that you've seen, observed on your journey that
no,
is a
I
terrific
think no.
founder.
Well,
fascinating.
I'm going to come at it 2 ways. The answer is no, because my own history has been obscured from me. I've been deprived those stories. They're not top of mind. They weren't valued. They're not the narrative that I internalized over the last 2 decades as I went on my own journey. So no, but that's not because they're not out there. Right. I mean, I think realistically, there are fewer women in those roles. I mean, we know that, but no, I think part of the erasure of history, and this is true for women, for particularly for Black Americans in this country, the erasure of this history, as though we never were and only now are becoming, isn't fair, correct, right, just, or even helpful. There have been women entrepreneurs forever. They may have been marginalized, uncelebrated. They didn't get the cover story in TechCrunch, but they have been there. Same as there have been Black people building incredibly successful businesses, but because if a tree falls in the woods. And so I think, my answer, I was asked recently to fill out an application for a fellowship, and they asked me about who were my role models. Right. And I was like, I had none. I had very good mentors. I had men who supported me along the way, but that's not the same as a role model. I wasn't modeling myself after them. I didn't see myself in them. What they were advocates and helpers who were filling in some blanks and taking me on along the way. But no, so that I don't have a passionate list of female founders that have inspired me is a real fucking problem. And I think it speaks to that. So the answer is I don't have
like we sort of remember and then we forget. And for me, part of that is when I graduated college, right? We know that thing about the number of women with engineering and CS degrees graduating the 2 years before me hit its peak, like 37%. And then we went down to below 17 or something. Yeah. And now we're on the upswing. 2 really interesting things in there, though. Women didn't go away. Women getting advanced degrees, masters and PhDs, that continued to grow steadily that whole time. Completely. So yes,
I think that I hope in the future, when you ask me that question, or when you ask another woman that question in the future, another woman asks another woman that question, that she will be able to answer it in a much better way. Okay, we're back to today. We're in the present day.
Present time.
So again, kind of we're mirroring each other a lot in these questions. So while we see more women in startup culture now in different roles, more as, you know, as founders, and then we're certainly seeing more women come in as fund managers, it still feels weirdly dehumanized to me. God forbid a female founder get pregnant or need to take time off to take care of her aging parents. It's like the sign says women are welcome, but but in reality, women's experiences are still not welcome, and they're really, really taboo. So my question to you is, first, what the fuck is up with that? And second, how are you helping the women you invest in, mentor, and advise to navigate this thing between women are welcome, but your experiences are not?
Oh, this is such a deep and meaty question, first of all. And the way that I guess I think about this a couple different ways. One is that just the question of, can this be a problem, and why can't we accept the human aspects of women? You know, there's a fundamental policy thing there, which is that we got to have family leave, and we've got to have people who believe in that to make any type of difference, and men have to take it as well as women. And otherwise we never end the mommy penalty, right? But in terms of the founders today, I think this is one of those other myths. It's like, we're not allowed to see women doing this. You're supposed to hide it. But in the female founders program last semester in the fall, I had 2 founders in the course of this big Techstars accelerator, while they were going out to raise their Series A, have babies during the process. Yeah. And you know what? They just kept running their companies, and they took their maternity leave. They figured out how to plan it with their co-founder, and they made it happen. And I think the important thing there is that thing that we were just talking about. If we don't make it visible that this is a totally doable, normal, totally natural thing that women do, then it's a problem. Like I've had women tell me that, like, they're pitching and they're pregnant, and they make sure, I'm stepping into the like blazing light in my office, they make sure that the baby bump is out of the Zoom nowadays. They can get away with hiding it.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's better just the more we're out with it. But it is it's one of those, what did you say? Well, screw you twice.
Yeah, punish me twice.
Punish me twice.
All right, Jennifer, hit me up with your question about the present.
So my question about the present is, I think we have a Goldilocks syndrome, that there is no age when you have the right amount of experience. Like, you're too young, or you're too a mother, or you're too old. And I want to know, what have you seen female founders do to try to overcome some of those biases, especially when they're fundraising, because you're so good at turning experience into an asset?
Yeah, I think there's I'm seeing a generational shift. So I think there's the way women my age dealt with it. And I think there's a way that a new generation of women founders are dealing with it. And one of my realizations, I think I've talked to you about this before, was I became really aware about 2 years ago of a great risk for me mentoring these women, was that I should not and cannot bequeath upon them my coping mechanisms, that I need to let them pick their battles and choose to take punches or dodge punches in a way that feels natural and organic to them. And I'm seeing now, kind of to your point on the last question, a little less sensitivity around it, and a little more bullishness around taking it head on. I think where we have residual challenges here are on the stakeholders and the people in power who are older and are men and are even older women who are white knuckling our patterns, old patterns, and still expecting those entrepreneurs to fit into them. I think there's still collateral damage there, and that burning off the ether of that is still a real barrier. But I think there's a whole generation of founders that is coming like a tsunami, and they're eroding these power structures in ways that we couldn't stop even if we wanted to.
I love that image.
And I think a lot of this opportunity now is to get out of the way and give them forum, and then decide and pick the places where you want to intervene and help and inform and learn. But really, I think at this point, there's a whole new generation that just doesn't believe in the structures that we were taught to have to feel that they were permanent, even if they were terrible, whether
Like
that's government,
dramatic
whatever it is.
separation of, like,
Whether it's
church and
government,
state, family and work.
There's a whole new generation of people that are global citizens, digital natives, do not believe in old hierarchies, just don't believe in the things that we believed in, even if we spent our lives teaching ourselves to unbelieve. They just don't even believe. So I think a lot of what's happening now is to get out of the way.
I think getting that out of the way. Also think when you see women who've successfully navigated it or are navigating it real time, giving other women exposure to those women as they're going through it makes a huge difference.
It's a huge difference.
Those two founders.
Definitely.
We have another founder right now, Heather Ames here in Boston of Neurala Systems is a great example of somebody who's navigated this family childhood thing well, and she's just been a tremendous resource to other women.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Okay, all right, buckle up. We're going to the future now. Get in your time machine. Okay,
yep, I'm ready.
Again, in a future world, the spectrum of women's lived experience is as normalized as those of men. Okay, future world. It is not weird to have your period at work. A hot flash is about as weird as a burp on Taco Tuesday. In this world, what do the history books often cite as the early signs that the tides had finally changed and irrevocably shifted? So like what's the harbinger that they say that was the harbinger of a world without patriarchy?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Harbingers of a world without patriarchy.
Because history books like to do that. They like to be kind of trite and reductionist.
At the same level as men. Okay. Founders of color represents our spectrum. I think another thing is that we no longer hear that women have challenges with communication. That's not an issue. Like we're heard for what we have and bring to the table. I think we see a world where you could have 9 Supreme Court justices that are all women, right? To me, those are things that are harbingers that we've really changed. And in the meantime, I think there's steps along the way, like taking more seriously. I talked about family leave. I think making places where there's safety in startups or where VCs pick up some of the HR role that's missing, be able to navigate the issues that small teams with no structure have around communication, around family leave and those things. I think it's on us to make those things happen and happen the way we want to see them.
Amen. All right, home stretchly. Launch me into tomorrow. Ask me about the future.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm on my future question. To me, having diversity of experience, age, gender, culture, race is just a critical part in being able to see opportunities and create value. And I'm curious about in the future companies that you see that would take a unique perspective on the world, born out of that kind of experience.
I think just based on what I'm already seeing with the younger founders is they're not just gonna change the rules. I think they're gonna redefine value in ways that are going to be difficult for those of us who will live long enough to want to participate. I think that what is value? What does it mean to create value? What does it mean to create wealth, prosperity? What does it mean to be successful? I think we've taken for a very long time the answers to those questions in startup culture as canonical, as sort of like delivered from the mount, right? And as religion, and as though they came from a spiritual being from the beyond, and not from 10 guys who left PayPal. Like there's just so much going on there that I think that I've said a couple times today that the genie is out of the bottle, the horse has left the barn. I believe for better and for discomfort, I don't want to say worse, but for discomfort, we can't go backwards. Globalization, changing values and beliefs around power structures, the flattening of hierarchies, the parts of the world. It's really only certain parts of the world that refuse to believe that this is happening, and it happens to be half of America. The rest of the world is much more.
You know what I think about this? That you said it really, really well. I think one of the signs of change that this is really changing is that it's not just young women.
No,
I mean,
it's
you
global.
still got Gloria Steinem, waving the banner, but women 55 and over are founding companies and innovating things. They're founding not-for-profits, recognizing that this ageism is a problem. It's now we're really in the place where multiple generations are pulling together. Yes. And maybe that's one of the biggest harbingers of change, is that we're saying, like, Sandy can go and found a company at 63 and raise hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital. When she did it once before in 1972, and all the women along the way in that continuum are out making this change happen.
Yeah, it's global, and I think feminism is also about social justice, and it's about racism, and it's about classism. And I think we learned a lot from looking at the women who came before us and what they did well and what they did poorly. And I think this is a phenomena that we can't stop. Now, it will be uncomfortable, disruptive. There'll be collateral damage. It won't be a quick battle. It's going to be a long war. Like what is it? There was the Amazon show that pretended like that, imagined what happened if the Nazis had won, right? The High Tower, whatever it was called.
The High Tower. Yeah.
Yes, I think there's a lot that is uncertain, but the optimist in me wants to believe that decency will prevail, but that really we need to be more honest with ourselves about our own inability to predict what somebody who is 10 or 15 today, where they're going to take things.
Well, and I think even someone right now, I think one of the really interesting things to me is to open your minds, whether you're a woman working in the trenches along this continuum, or a founder of color, or someone seeing them, an ally. Open your minds to the things that you don't see, that someone else's unique perspective lets you see. Like, I think about in the AI space, right?
Yeah, we see more.
Who notices that the genomic data is mostly men? It's Black women and Black men. Who notices that our facial recognition technology does not recognize women? And by the way, it's not just that it doesn't recognize women of color, it's that the majority of those databases were built with 30-year-old women and younger, because that's the sort of beauty demographic. And so they do a terrible job recognizing women over 35. Terrible, right?
Yeah.
So these are things where be open to the things that you don't see, that someone else's view of the world makes possible. And that very big companies can be built from that making possible.
Amen. Well,
amen.
We have circumnavigated this topic with our 3 questions, and I appreciate your guidance and support, and friendship, and partnership in this conversation. And I know that we're just beginning to have this conversation, so it's the tip of the iceberg. So thank you again.
I'm your hugest fan, and I am
can't wait to
so
see you
for this opportunity. Thank you.